Commander HFY stared at the flickering display screen in front of him. The numbers were not good. Food supplies would last maybe 10 more days. Water for 15 if they cut everyone's share again. The air recyclers were failing on 12 ships, and they had no spare parts left to fix them. Behind him, the bridge crew of the Kethmiran flagship Times, Eternal Dawn Times, worked quietly at their stations. Nobody spoke about the obvious truth. They were all going to die out here in the cold darkness between stars. 3 months ago, their homeworld of Kethmir had begun to shake apart. The star that gave them life started to grow bigger and hotter. Their scientists said it would swallow their planet within a year. So 700 ships carried everyone they could save into space. 2 million Kethmirans left their dying world behind, hoping to find a new home among the stars. They had sent message after message to every known civilization in the galaxy. The Galactic Council received their calls for help. So did the Altarian Empire, the Zephyrian Trade Federation, and the Harmony Collective. All the great powers of space knew the Kethmirans were dying slowly in the void. None of them cared. HFY remembered the last communication from the Galactic Council. A cold voice had told him that the Kethmirans were not full members of galactic society. They had never passed the tests for advanced civilization. Their technology was too simple, their culture too primitive. The Council had more important things to worry about. The Altarians had been even worse. Their ambassador had laughed during the transmission. He said the Kethmirans were weak creatures who deserved their fate. Strong species survived. Weak ones died. That was the natural order of things. The Zephyrian response had been all about money. They calculated how much it would cost to rescue the refugee fleet. Then they calculated how much profit the Kethmirans could bring them as workers or slaves. The numbers did not work out in the Kethmirans' favor. The Trade Federation declined to help. Even the Harmony Collective, who claimed to care about all life in the galaxy, had turned them away. They said the Kethmirans were evolutionarily non-viable. Their species had failed to adapt properly to galactic civilization. Saving them would interfere with natural selection. It would be wrong to help them. So the refugee fleet drifted in the void sector, a dark region of space that most ships avoided. They were trapped between a collapsing nebula that was full of deadly radiation and a massive gravity well that pulled at their ships. Their engines were too weak to escape. They could only wait and hope that someone, somewhere, might change their mind about helping them. But hope was running out as fast as their food supplies. HFY walked to the viewing port and looked out at the other ships in his fleet. Many of them were damaged. Some barely had power. The ship Times, Tender Mercy Times, had lost all its lights 2 days ago. The families inside were living in darkness, keeping warm by staying close together. On the ship Times, Children's Promise *, 300 young Kethmirans were growing weaker each day. They got smaller food portions because the adults decided the children should eat first. But there simply was not enough food for everyone. The worst part was not the dying, though. The worst part was the silence from the galaxy around them. Their distress signals went out every day, broadcast on all frequencies. And every day, nothing came back except empty space and distant stars. HFY had listened to transmissions from other ships. He knew that trade convoys passed through nearby systems. Military fleets conducted exercises just a few light years away. The galaxy was full of life and activity, but none of it included helping the Kethmirans. His communications officer, a young female named Silantha, looked up from her station. "Commander, should we send another distress signal?" HFY almost said no. What was the point? But then he thought about the children on the other ships. As long as even one of them was still alive, he had to keep trying. "Yes," he said. "Send it on all frequencies. Tell them we are the Kethmiran refugee fleet. Tell them we are peaceful people who need help. Tell them we have children who will die without food and medicine." Silantha nodded and began working at her console. HFY knew she was also running out of hope. They all were. As the message went out into space, HFY thought about his people's history. The Kethmirans had always been builders, not warriors. They grew beautiful gardens and made art that celebrated life. They had learned to travel between stars later than other species, and their technology was simpler than most. But they were good people who cared for each other and harmed no one. Apparently, that was not enough to deserve rescue. The hours passed slowly. Some of HFY's officers suggested they should try to raid other ships for supplies. Take what they needed by force from any vessel that came near them. But HFY refused. If they were going to die, they would die as Kethmirans. They would not become pirates and killers just to live a few more days. As his shift ended, HFY made his way to his private quarters. Tomorrow he would record a final message for anyone who might find their ships after they were all dead. He would tell the story of how the great galactic civilization abandoned 2 million peaceful refugees because they were not important enough to save. He would make sure the galaxy remembered that the Kethmirans had lived, and that when they died alone, because no one else cared enough to answer their call for help. Outside his window, the stars looked cold and distant. Somewhere out there, mighty fleets traveled between worlds. Advanced civilizations built wonders that spanned solar systems. But for the Kethmirans, the galaxy had become nothing more than a vast graveyard where they waited to join the silence of space. Captain Sarah Chen was drinking her morning coffee when the distress signal came through the speakers on the bridge of the human exploration ship Times Defiance Asterisk. The voice was weak and full of static, but the words were clear enough. This is Commander HFY of the Kethmiran refugee fleet. We are 700 ships carrying 2 million civilians. Our home world was destroyed. We need immediate assistance with food, medicine, and safe passage to habitable space. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we have children who are dying. The bridge went quiet. Chen's communications officer, Lieutenant Park, looked up from his station. Captain, that signal is coming from the void sector. It's been broadcasting for months. Chen frowned. The void sector was dangerous space that most ships avoided. Months? Has anyone responded to them? Park checked his records. According to the galactic communication logs, the Galactic Council received their messages. So did the Altarians, Zephyrians, and the Harmony Collective. No one has sent help. No one? Chen could not believe what she was hearing. 2 million people have been asking for help for months, and no one answered? Her science officer, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, pulled up star charts on the main screen. Captain, look at this. The refugee fleet is trapped between a collapsing nebula and a gravity anomaly. The nebula is putting out deadly radiation. The gravity well is too strong for most ships to escape. Chen studied the display. The situation was worse than dangerous. It was nearly impossible. Any rescue attempt would risk the lives of the rescue ships and their crews. She could see why other civilizations might decide it was too risky, but she could not understand why they had not even tried. Sir, said her tactical officer, Commander James Wright, we should probably report this to Earth Command before we do anything. The void sector is outside our normal patrol area. Chen nodded. Open a channel to Admiral Rivera at Earth Command. Priority transmission. It took several minutes for the signal to reach Earth and for the Admiral to respond. When his face appeared on the screen, Chen quickly explained the situation. She told him about the refugee fleet, the months of ignored distress calls, and the dangerous conditions in the void sector. Admiral Rivera listened without interrupting. When Chen finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then, he leaned forward in his chair. Captain, what are your ship's capabilities for a rescue mission in that region? Chen looked at her officers. Dr. Tanaka was already running calculations. Sir, we could reach them. But we could not evacuate even a small fraction of 2 million people. We would need a whole fleet. Then we will send a whole fleet, Rivera said simply. Change course for the void sector immediately. Begin rescue operations as soon as you arrive. I will organize additional ships and send them to assist you. The transmission ended. Chen looked around her bridge at the surprised faces of her crew. Captain, Wright said carefully, did the Admiral just order us to attempt the rescue that every major galactic power has refused to try? Yes, he did. Even though it will be extremely dangerous? Yes, And even though these aliens are not human citizens or allies? Chen turned to face her tactical officer. Commander Wright, do you have a problem with our orders? Wright straightened up. No, sir. I was just making sure I understood correctly. Dr. Tanaka was still working at her science station. Captain, I am analyzing the sensor data from the refugee fleet. Their ships are in terrible condition. Life support is failing on many vessels. They have very little food or medicine left. How long do we have? Days. Maybe a week at most before people start dying in large numbers. Chen felt a cold anger building in her chest. Not anger at the Kethmirans, but at the galactic powers who had left them to die. These were people calling for help, and the so-called civilized galaxy had turned its back on them because they were not important enough to save. Lieutenant Park, send a message to the Kethmiran fleet. Tell them help is coming. Tell them to hold on. Sonarwan. As Park transmitted the message, Chen thought about what made humans different from the other species in the galaxy. Most alien civilizations made decisions based on logic, profit, or political advantage. They calculated costs and benefits. They measured worth by technology and power. Humans did those things too, but they also had something else. They had a stubborn refusal to let good people die if there was any way to prevent it, even if those people were strangers, even if helping them was dangerous or costly, even if the rest of the galaxy thought they were stupid for trying. Chen's thoughts were interrupted by an incoming communication from the Galactic Council. The face of Ambassador Kreshtal, an Altarian, appeared on the screen. His expression was not friendly. Captain Chen, we understand your ship is proceeding toward the Kethmiran refugee fleet in the Void sector. The Council strongly advises against this course of action. Why? Chen asked. The region is extremely hazardous. Your ship and crew will likely be lost. And for what? To save a primitive species that has already been deemed non-viable by galactic standards. Chen felt her jaw clench. With respect, Ambassador, we do not measure people by galactic standards. We measure them by human standards, which are, they are alive. They asked for help. That is enough. The ambassador's expression became even colder. Captain, you humans are new to galactic civilization. You do not understand how things work. Resources are limited. Not every species can be saved. Difficult choices must be made. You are right, Chen said. We are new here. And if this is how galactic civilization works, then maybe galactic civilization needs to change. She cut the transmission before the ambassador could respond. Her bridge crew was grinning. Park gave her a thumbs up. Dr. Tanaka was trying not to laugh. Even the serious Commander Wright was smiling. Well, Wright said, I guess we just told the Galactic Council what we think of their advice. Set course for the Void sector, Chen ordered. Maximum speed. And send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we are going to need every ship they can spare, every supply transport they can find, and every medical team they can organize. We have 2 million people to save, and we are not leaving anyone behind. The Time's Defiance Times turned toward the dangerous darkness of the Void sector. Behind them, Earth Command was already mobilizing the largest rescue operation in human history. Ahead of them, 700 ships full of dying refugees waited for help that they had almost given up hoping would ever come. But hope was about to arrive, carried by humans who believed that every life had value. Within 6 hours of Captain Chen's first transmission, Earth Command had transformed into a center of controlled chaos. Admiral Rivera stood in the main operations room, watching as dozens of officers coordinated the largest rescue mission humanity had ever attempted. Admiral, called Commander Lisa Santos from the communications desk. We have confirmation from the Titan shipyards. They are sending 15 cargo vessels loaded with food and medical supplies. The Luna Medical Center is preparing trauma teams for alien physiology. Rivera nodded and turned to the tactical display showing ship positions across human space. Red dots represented vessels that were being redirected to the rescue mission. There were more than he had dared to hope for. Sir, said Captain Rodriguez from the Fleet Coordination Station, the civilian response has been incredible. We have mining ships from the asteroid belt volunteering to help. Transport companies are offering their vessels for free. Even the passenger cruise ship Times, Starlight Princess Times, has volunteered to take refugees. The Admiral smiled grimly. This was exactly what he had expected from humans, but it still amazed him. When faced with a crisis involving strangers they had never met, ordinary people were dropping everything to help. His aide, Lieutenant Commander Hayes, approached with a datapad. Admiral, we have some concerns from the Joint Chiefs. They are asking about the strategic implications of this rescue. What if it damages our relationships with the major galactic powers? 1. Rivera took the pad and skimmed through the concerns. The military leadership was worried about political consequences. The Galactic Council was already expressing displeasure with human actions. The Altarian Empire had sent what amounted to a threat, warning humans not to interfere with natural galactic processes. Send a message to the Joint Chiefs, Rivera said, handing back the datapad. Tell them that our strategic doctrine has always been clear. We help people who need help. If that damages our relationship with civilizations who abandon refugees, then those were not relationships worth having. Meanwhile, at the edge of the void sector, Captain Chen was getting her first close look at the challenge ahead. The region of space was a nightmare of twisted gravity fields, unstable energy patterns, and radiation storms. Her science officer was shaking her head as she studied the sensor readings. Captain, Dr. Tanaka said, this is worse than our long-range scans indicated. The nebula is not just collapsing, it is collapsing in an unpredictable pattern. The gravity anomaly is creating space-time distortions. And there is some kind of subspace interference that will make communications extremely difficult. Chen looked at the tactical display. 700 red dots represented the Kethmiran ships, scattered across a region of space that looked like a death trap. How scattered are they? Very scattered. It looks like they have been trying to stay away from the worst radiation zones, but that has spread them out across several light years. Some ships are grouped together, but others are isolated. Commander Wright was running battle simulations at his station. Captain, standard rescue doctrine would be to save the ships that are easiest to reach first. We could probably evacuate maybe 50 ships before the conditions become too dangerous. 50 ships out of 700, Chen said quietly. Yes, sir. It would still save over 100,000 lives. Chen stared at the display. 50 ships. 100,000 people. Any other species would probably consider that a reasonable success. Save who you could, and accept that some losses were inevitable. But Chen was human. And humans had a very different definition of acceptable losses. No, she said. We are not leaving anyone behind. I do not care how dangerous it gets, or how long it takes. Every ship gets evacuated. Her crew exchanged glances. They had worked with Captain Chen long enough to know that when she made a decision like that, she meant it. Dr. Tanaka looked up from her station. Captain, I am receiving a transmission from the Kethmiran flagship. Commander Zexhai wants to speak with you. The main screen flickered, and the face of an alien appeared. Zexhai looked tired and thin, but his eyes were bright with something that Chen realized was hope. Captain Chen, he said, my people are grateful that you have come. But I must tell you, the conditions here are very dangerous. We do not want you to risk your lives for us. If the situation is hopeless, Chen leaned forward. Commander Zexhai, let me explain something about humans. We do not abandon people who need help. We certainly do not abandon children who are starving. Your situation is dangerous, but it is not hopeless. Help is coming. How much help? Chen smiled. Earth Command is sending every ship they can find. Cargo vessels, medical ships, passenger transports, even civilian volunteers. We are going to get every one of your people to safety. For a moment, Zexhai could not speak. When he found his voice again, it was shaky with emotion. Captain, why are you doing this? Your species barely knows us. We can offer you very little in return. Because you asked for help, Chen said simply. Because you have children who are hungry. Because leaving people to die when you can save them is wrong. Do we need more reasons than that? The transmission ended, and Chen turned back to her crew. Lieutenant Park was monitoring communications from Earth. Captain, Admiral Rivera reports that Operation Shepherd is proceeding ahead of schedule. The main rescue fleet will arrive in 18 hours. We have 43 ships confirmed, including 12 medical vessels and 20 cargo ships loaded with supplies. 43 ships, Wright said with amazement. For a rescue mission that every galactic power refused to attempt. Dr. Tanaka was analyzing the incoming fleet data. Captain, this is fascinating. The other species always approach problems like this with careful planning and minimal risk. They calculate exactly how many ships they need and send that number. But humans just send everyone. Is that inefficient? Chen asked. Probably. It is also completely overwhelming. We are not just mounting a rescue operation. We are creating a humanitarian fleet that outguns most military forces. As if to prove her point, an alert chimed at the communications station. Lieutenant Park looked confused as he read the incoming message. Captain, we are being contacted by a Zephyrian trade convoy. They want to know if we are planning to attack someone. Chen almost laughed. Tell them we are conducting a rescue mission. They say they do not understand. They count 43 human ships heading toward a region of space with no strategic value. They want to know what we are really doing. End quote. Tell them the truth. We are saving people. There was a pause while Park transmitted the message. Then his expression became even more confused. Captain, they say that does not make sense. They want to know what profit we expect to make from this operation. Now Chen did laugh. Tell them the profit is that people who were dying will be alive. If they cannot understand that, we cannot help them. As the Defiance times continued toward the refugee fleet, Chen thought about the fundamental difference between humans and most other galactic species. Other species made decisions based on logic, efficiency, and self-interest. Those were not bad things, but they were not the only important things. Humans also made decisions based on something else. Something that other species often dismissed as weakness or primitive emotion. They made decisions based on the simple belief that right was right, regardless of cost or consequence. In a few hours, that belief was going to be tested in the dangerous darkness of the Void Sector. The human rescue fleet arrived at the edge of the Void Sector like a swarm of determined angels. 43 ships of every size and type spread out across space, their captains receiving final instructions from Admiral Rivera aboard the command vessel Hope's Light *. Remember, the Admiral's voice came through every ship's communication system. We are not just here to save some of these people. We are here to save all of them, every ship, every family, every child. Standard alien protocol says to take the easy rescues first. Human protocol says nobody gets left behind. Captain Chen watched from the bridge of the Defiance times as the fleet organized itself into rescue groups. The cargo ships, Mountain Mover times, and Star Lifter times would evacuate the largest Kethmiran vessels. The medical ships would take the most damaged refugee ships first. The smaller human vessels would handle the isolated Kethmiran craft scattered throughout the dangerous zone. Captain, Doctor, Tanaka called from her science station. I am reading massive energy fluctuations from the collapsing nebula, and the gravity anomaly is getting stronger. We need to move fast before conditions get worse. Chen nodded and opened a channel to her assigned target. The Kethmiran command ship Eternal Dawn *, trapped deep inside the most dangerous part of the Void Sector. Commander Zexhai, this is Captain Chen. We are beginning the rescue operation. My ship will reach you in approximately 2 hours. Captain Chen, came the reply, full of static and interference. Our situation has become critical. We have lost main power. Life support is failing. Several of my people have already. The transmission cut out. Tactical analysis, Chen ordered. Commander Wright was already working. The Eternal Dawn times is caught between 3 different hazards. There are radiation storms from the nebula, gravity distortions that could crush our ship, and some kind of subspace interference that is disrupting all electronic systems. Recommendations? Standard procedure would be to wait for conditions to improve. How long would that take? Wright checked his calculations. Maybe weeks. Possibly months. Chen looked at the screen showing the distant Kethmiran ship. They do not have weeks. What are our alternatives? Dr. Tanaka looked up from her station. Captain, I have an idea. It is completely crazy, but it might work. If we reconfigure our shields to operate as a subspace resonance field, we might be able to create a safe corridor through the interference zone. Might? Wright asked. Well, it could also overload our entire power system and leave us trapped here too. Chen did not hesitate. Do it. While Dr. Tanaka worked on the shield modifications, Chen watched the rest of the rescue operation beginning around them. The cargo ship times mountain mover times had reached a cluster of 20 Kethmiran vessels and was using modified tractor beams to pull them to safety. The medical ship times, Mercy times, was docking with damaged refugee ships, transferring their passengers to human vessels with working life support. But the most amazing sight was the converted passenger liner times Starlight Princess Asterisk. The luxury ship had removed all its fancy decorations and filled its ballrooms and restaurants with emergency shelters. Captain Maria Santos, who normally carried wealthy tourists to resort planets, was personally helping load Kethmiran children onto her vessel. Captain Chen, came Santos's voice over the communication channel. We have room for 8,000 refugees on the Times Princess Asterisk. Send us anyone who needs immediate medical care. The human fleet worked with an efficiency that amazed even Chen. There was no central planning, no complex coordination. Each ship simply found Kethmiran vessels that needed help, and helped them. When problems arose, human crews improvised solutions on the spot. Engineer Rodriguez on the Times Star Lifter Times discovered that the tractor beams could not properly grip the alien hull material. So he and his team created improvised magnetic clamps in 20 minutes, using spare parts from the ship's machine shop. Dr. Patel, on the medical ship Times Healing Hand Times, found that human medical equipment was not compatible with Kethmiran physiology. So she worked with Kethmiran doctors over radio to develop new treatment procedures for alien patients she had never seen before. But the most challenging rescue was still ahead. Captain, Dr. Tanaka announced, shield modifications are complete. We are ready to attempt approach to the Times Eternal Dawn, asterisk. Take us in, Chen ordered. The Times Defiance Times moved slowly into the chaotic space around the Kethmiran command ship. Alarms sounded as radiation levels spiked. The ship shook as gravity waves pulled at its hull. The lights flickered as subspace interference tried to disrupt their power systems. Hull stress at 60%, Wright reported. Radiation shielding holding. Gravity compensators working at maximum capacity. Through the chaos, Chen could see the Times Eternal Dawn times ahead of them. The alien ship was dark, except for a few emergency lights. Pieces of its hull were peeling away under the gravitational stress. Commander Zexhai, respond please, Chen called. A weak voice came through the static. Captain Chen, our hull is failing. We are evacuating to the central sections of the ship, but many of our people are trapped in the damaged areas. How many people are on your ship? Nearly 50,000. But our escape pods are not working. If you cannot dock with us, Chen did not let him finish. We will dock with you. Prepare your people for evacuation, Captain, Wright said urgently. Docking with them, while we are both caught in this gravity storm, is impossible. The stress forces could tear both ships apart. Then we make it possible, Chen replied. Get me Chief Engineer Rodriguez. Rodriguez's face appeared on the communication screen. He was covered in grease and looked exhausted, but his eyes were alert. Chief, I need you to work a miracle. We need to dock with a ship that is caught in a gravity well, while we are also caught in the same gravity well. Can you do it? Rodriguez grinned. Captain, I can do anything. Just give me 10 minutes to rig some additional structural supports and reroute power to the docking clamps. While Rodriguez worked his engineering magic, Chen watched the rest of the rescue operation through her tactical display. The human fleet had already evacuated over 300 of the 700 Kethmiran ships. Thousands of refugees were being transferred to human vessels every minute. But there were problems too. The cargo ship times, heavy hauler times, had suffered engine damage while pulling a damaged Kethmaran freighter out of the radiation zone. The medical ship Times, Lifesaver Times, was overwhelmed with injured refugees and needed help. The amazing thing was how quickly other human ships moved to help. When Times Heavy Hauler Times lost power, the mining ship Times Rock Crusher Times immediately came to assist. When Times Lifesaver Times sent out a call for medical supplies, 4 different vessels responded within minutes. "Captain," Rodriguez called from engineering, "we are ready for docking. But I need to warn you, this is going to be rough. Really rough." "Understood. Begin docking approach." The Times Defiance Times moved carefully toward the Times Eternal Dawn *. Both ships were being pulled and twisted by the gravity anomaly. Docking clamps that normally connected smoothly instead slammed together with crushing force. The sound of metal straining echoed through both vessels. "Docking successful," Wright reported, sounding amazed. "Hull integrity, holding on both ships. Open all airlocks," Chen ordered. "Begin immediate evacuation. I want every person off that ship in 30 minutes. What followed was organized chaos. Human crew members ran through the corridors of the dying alien ship, carrying Kethmaran children and helping injured adults reach the evacuation points. The artificial gravity was failing, so people floated through passages lit only by emergency lights. Chen herself led a team to reach trapped Kethmarans in the damaged sections of the ship. They crawled through twisted metal and broken passages, following the sounds of voices calling for help. When they found a family trapped under collapsed debris, Chen and her security chief lifted the heavy metal beams, while other crew members pulled the aliens to safety. "Captain," Commander Zexhai said as he was being helped toward an evacuation pod, "I do not understand why your people are risking so much for us." "Because we can," Chen replied, lifting a small Kethmaran child who was too weak to walk. "Because you need help and we can provide it. What other reason do we need?" 28 minutes after docking, the last Kethmaran was transferred to the Times Defiance *. Commander Zexhai was the final person to leave his ship, and Chen had to physically drag him away from the bridge where he had spent months trying to save his people. As both ships pulled away from each other, the Times Eternal Dawn Times finally collapsed under the gravitational stress. Its hull crumpled like paper, and its lights went out forever. But every person who had been aboard was now safe on human vessels. 3 days after the rescue operation ended, Commander Zexhai stood before the Galactic Council on the space station Nexus Prime. The Great Chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of alien civilizations, all staring at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to irritation. The council leader, a tall Altarian named High Ambassador Kreshvak, gestured for silence. "Commander Zexhai, you have requested to address this assembly. Speak." Zexhai looked around the chamber at the alien faces. These were the representatives of the great galactic powers. The same powers that had received his people's distress calls for months and done nothing. "Honored Council," he began. 3 months ago, my people sent messages to every civilization in this chamber. We told you our world was dying. We told you we had 2 million refugees, including children, who needed help finding a new home. We told you we were peaceful people who meant no harm to anyone. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several ambassadors looked uncomfortable. The response from this council was that my people were not advanced enough to deserve rescue. The Altarian Empire told us we were weak and deserved our fate. The Zephyrian Trade Federation calculated that saving us would not be profitable. The Harmony Collective declared us evolutionarily non-viable. High Ambassador Kreshvak interrupted. "Commander, we understand you are grateful to the humans for their intervention, but the Council's decisions were based on established protocols for what?" Zexhai's voice was louder now, and it carried across the silent chamber. "For deciding which species deserve to live and which deserve to die? For measuring the worth of children by their technological development? For abandoning refugees because helping them is inconvenient?" He took a step forward, and his voice became quieter but somehow more powerful. "Let me tell you what happened when the humans received our distress signal. Within hours, they changed course to help us. Within a day, they had mobilized their entire available fleet. Within 3 days, they had saved every single one of my people, including the last child on the last ship in the most dangerous part of the void sector. The chamber was completely quiet now. They did this even though we had never met them before. Even though we could offer them nothing in return. Even though your council advised them against it. They did it because we asked for help, and they believe that is reason enough. Zexhai looked directly at High Ambassador Kreshvak. So, I ask you, honored council, which species in this chamber is truly civilized? The ones who measure worth by power and technology? Or the ones who measure worth by the simple fact that we live and breathe and hope? Before anyone could respond, Zexhai activated a small device he carried. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing technical specifications and data charts. Since you seem to value technological advancement above all else, let me share something with you. My people are experts in biotechnology and genetic engineering. For the past 1,000 years, we have been developing medical techniques that your most advanced civilizations cannot match. We can cure diseases that kill millions of your people every year. We can extend lifespans far beyond what your science achieves. The murmurs in the chamber grew louder. Several ambassadors were leaning forward to study the data. This technology is now being shared freely with humanity, as payment for their rescue of my people. Soon, human medicine will be the most advanced in the galaxy. And do you know what the humans plan to do with it? They plan to share it with everyone who needs it, regardless of whether those people can pay, or whether they are considered worthy by galactic standards. High Ambassador Kreshvak was looking increasingly uncomfortable. Commander, surely you are not suggesting that. I am not suggesting anything, Zexhai interrupted. I am stating facts. The humans saved my people when you would not. They are gaining access to technology you dismissed as worthless, and they are going to use that technology to help everyone. While you continue to debate who deserves to live and who deserves to die, he looked around the chamber one more time. The galaxy is changing. There is now a species that believes every life has value. A species that will answer calls for help even when it is dangerous or costly. A species that judges others by their need for help rather than their ability to provide benefit. You may continue to operate by your old rules, but do not expect the rest of the galaxy to ignore this new option. Zexhai turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the council in shocked silence. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Rivera was reviewing reports in his office when Captain Chen entered. Admiral, the integration of Kethmiran refugees is proceeding smoothly. We have established temporary settlements on 7 different worlds. The medical technology exchange is already showing promising results, and I have something else to report. Rivera looked up from his papers. What is it, Captain? We are receiving new distress signals. 3 different refugee groups in other parts of the galaxy have heard about the Kethmiran rescue. They are specifically asking for human assistance. Rivera was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. How many ships do we have available for rescue operations? Not nearly enough if this trend continues. Then we will build more ships, and train more rescue crews, and organize more supply runs. Rivera stood up and walked to the window, overlooking the shipyards where new vessels were already under construction. Admiral, Chen said, the other galactic powers are not happy about our rescue operations. They say we are interfering with established protocols. Some of them are talking about sanctions or other responses. Rivera shrugged. Let them talk. They had their chance to help those people, and they chose not to. We are not going to stop helping people just because other civilizations disapprove. 6 months later, the Human Kethmiran Rescue Corps was officially established. Based on the joint colony world of New Hope, the organization operated a fleet of specially designed rescue vessels crewed by humans and Kethmirans working together. The Corps responded to distress calls from across the galaxy. They saved mining crews trapped in asteroid collapse. They evacuated planets threatened by natural disasters. They rescued ships lost in dangerous space phenomena. They helped anyone who asked for help, regardless of species or political affiliation. The impact on galactic civilization was enormous. Species that had been abandoned by the major powers began to look to humanity for assistance. Trade relationships shifted, as civilizations realized that human friendship was more valuable than the approval of the traditional galactic elite. Some of the older civilizations tried to adapt. The Harmony Collective announced new humanitarian programs. The Zephyrian Trade Federation began offering rescue services, though they still charged substantial fees. Even some Altarian commanders began quietly responding to distress calls, but it was too late. The galaxy had seen an alternative to the old way of doing things. They had seen a species that judged others by their need for help rather than their ability to provide benefit. And once that seed was planted, it grew quickly. Captain Chen, now Admiral Chen, and head of the Rescue Corps, kept a simple motto on her desk: "Every life has value." It was written in dozens of languages from across the galaxy, contributed by the species that humans had helped rescue over the years. On the wall of her office was a photo from the original Kethmaran rescue. It showed human crew members carrying alien children to safety, with the deadly beauty of the void sector in the background. Below the photo was a small plaque with a message from Commander Zex High: "To the species that answered when no one else would. To the people who proved that civilization is not measured by technology or power, but by the willingness to help those in need. The galaxy is a better place because you exist." Chen often looked at that photo when she was planning new rescue operations. It reminded her of something important. In a universe full of civilizations that calculated the worth of lives, humanity had chosen to be different. They had chosen to believe that the only calculation that mattered was simple: someone needs help, and we can provide it. That was enough. It had always been enough. And as long as humans existed in the galaxy, it always would be enough. The stars were vast and cold, but they were no longer empty of compassion. Somewhere in the darkness, human ships patrolled the forgotten corners of space, making sure that no one else would ever die alone while calling for help that never came. Because when the galaxy asked, "Why save them?" humanity answered, "Why not?"